Good evening. I want to welcome our panelists and community members to this special forum about the Princeton Public Schools bond referendum, which is just a few weeks away. The $13 million proposal for capital projects will appear on the November 7th general election ballot. If voters approve, the district will get an estimated $5 million from the state toward payment in debt service aid towards payment for the improvements towards principal and interest. The projects in this referendum would improve every one of our 6 schools. Proposed upgrades fall into 4 categories: safety and security, wellness and sustainability, technology, and major maintenance. You will hear much more about these projects tonight from the district's architect and other panelists. But first, I want to tell you how this referendum fits into a successful strategy for our district. Many other districts hold a bond referendum over long periods of time, every 20 to 25 years. They project what kind of needs they'll have down the road. At Princeton, we're trying to do it a little differently. Over the past several years, we've addressed our needs with smaller proposals. That keeps the scope of work manageable and lets us plan with more precision. This fiscally responsible approach means we replace equipment and improve facilities when we have to, not before. A December 2018 referendum funded security vestibules at the middle and elementary schools, as well as a lot of HVAC upgrades, and a major addition at the Princeton High School. Voters approved another referendum in January of 2022 for roofing and other exterior building work. The November proposal before you now would build on those projects by adding security vestibules to the high school and improving safety district-wide. We'd also continue our HVAC upgrades by adding continuing to add energy-efficient building controls. Our discussion tonight will cover these projects and others, along with the strategy to fund them. We are fortunate to have panelists with us who have plenty of expertise on this referendum, including the district's Director of Facilities, Dave Harding, Princeton High School Principal, Cecilia Burge, Princeton Board of Education members, Mara Franceschi, Susan Cantor, and Brian McDonald. We also have professional architect, George Duthie, bond counsel, Andrea Kahn, financial advisor, Brian Morris, and very lucky to have our police chief, John Vacher, here with us tonight. Let me share how our audience will ask questions tonight. After each segment, we'll answer a few questions. Please submit them through the chat, the Zoom chat. The chat will only be visible to the host and panelists to keep the focus on the forum. We'll do our best to direct questions to our panelists during the appropriate segment. We'll begin tonight with an overview of the projects from the district's architect and then dive into more details about how each upgrade would impact students and help our buildings operate more effectively. Our financial experts will outline state debt service aid and anticipated bond rates and tax impact. Finally, we'll cover our community's part in all of this, which is voting on or before November 7th. So I'm going to throw it over to George Duthie. George, can you give us a rundown of the projects included in the proposal?
Sure, happy to, Matt. Thank you very much. So, significant projects planned at Princeton High School. We'll start with the security vestibules. There are 2 of those, one at the main entrance to the high school, which you see rendered here. And this shows 2 different kind of approaches, different colors and so forth. But this will kind of give you the flavor of how we're going to manage security in a way that's very respectful and I think very nicely fits in with the design of that beautiful entrance shaft to the high school. Also, at the Performing Arts entrance, the PAC, we're going to create a separate secure entrance there as well. That project's a little less involved, but in any event, both of those are going to go a long way towards managing visitors, controlling the flow of traffic in and out of the school, which is always a good thing to do in public schools. Now, there are already security vestibules, as Mr. Bolden mentioned earlier, in the elementary schools and middle schools completed previously. So what else are we doing at the high school? We're going to renovate the high school cafeteria for better traffic flow and more seating capacity and the ability to serve kids more quickly. A new cafeteria design is going to increase our seating by about 50%. Number is still being worked on right now, but we have to do things like code review, find out what the fire occupancy loads are and things like that, working closely with the fire department and other officials. We're going to have a variety of seating styles now. We're going to we're going to continue with what we've done in other schools with a combination of high and low tables, some tables where you can sit, some tables where you can stand, okay? Being respectful of the fact that the kids don't have that much time for lunch, and sometimes they have other things they want to do, like, quick take a look at their tablet or something like that. So we want to try to keep that in mind. Right now, the round tables that are there are not the most efficient use of the space. So as I said, we're going to mix up different configurations of tables. We're going to modernize the kitchen equipment, some of the kitchen equipment. We're also going to, most importantly, improve the serving area. And we're going to create a number of stations. We're going to put in additional cashier stations, and we're going to figure out the queuing of all of the different types of food that are served during lunch. And we're going to move those kids through much more quickly. Idea being that those kids will be through the serving line much more quicker than they were before, and they'll have the ability to have a little more time for lunch. Okay, we're going to replace the field and the track, which are at the end of their useful life. Okay, normal useful life, and those will be replaced with a new synthetic turf surface, and of course a new rubber surface for the track. Okay, and you can see there, what the field and the track look like right now and some of the conditions. Okay, we will be placing new doors and locks in corridor locations at the high school and the middle school, continuing with security programs on the doors, replacing classroom doors, putting security glazing on those doors, and putting intruder lock sets on those doors as well. Okay, so that also will be another important security project. Other security maintenance and technology projects there: updating the security cameras, installing protective window film, improved network equipment for better connections, doing some work on the building's energy management system to improve the climate control within the building and to improve energy efficiency. And also at the middle and the elementary schools, there are technology and maintenance improvements planned as well. We're going to put cellular telephone service boosters at Johnson Park and the middle school because weak signals there. Again, another important safety project. We're going to be doing some upgrades at the middle school pool, and we're going to improve playground accessibility at Little Brook and Riverside, and drainage improvements at Little Brook and Community Park. Okay, so that's the highlights.
Excellent, George. Thanks so much. Let's see if we have any questions related to this overview. I'm not seeing any right now. So let's talk a little bit about the project timeline. We
Sure.
would be looking at 2 phases for the referendum projects.
Mhm.
If voters approve the referendum, construction would start next summer and would focus on doors and hardware at the middle school and high school, very important to our staff and students. The high school security vestibules, and the cafeteria and kitchen. It is possible that we could start the cafeteria project a little earlier in June, maybe, hopefully, because of the scope of the work and potential lead time issues with equipment replacements. Work on the track and field would be done in the next summer. We'd also be looking to start playground work as soon as we design, get our civil engineer on board, get those designs for the drainage improvements, and then also to focus on what equipment would be improved. So let's talk a little bit more about security projects that are proposed. We are fortunate to have our police chief here from the Princeton Police Department, Chief Boucher. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I never asked you that, and it would be embarrassing if I wasn't. So please correct me, Chief, if I'm incorrectly pronouncing your last name. But we're really happy to have you here tonight. The department assisted in a security analysis of our district that has shaped a lot of our planning over the recent last year and a half. Chief, would you like to start off and give us a little about your recommendations for school security?
Certainly, and thank you for having me. And close enough with the name. We'll call it a draw. Close.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I think everybody should know before we get into some of the recommendations that were made. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the relationship that we have with the district, and the police department puts a lot of energy into building that relationship day by day. And I think we arrived here, and it's a product, of the solid relationship. So many of the recommendations, as you mentioned, came after a lot of independent meetings with members of the district, members of the Princeton Police Department, walkthroughs, and building checks over the course of the last 18 months. And it's important to mention that, school security, public safety, they're synonymous with each other. And it really never ends. It's constantly evolving, changing. And it's our job, certainly my job, to make sure that, that we're making recommendations and making sure that the district is working with us to make sure that best practices are met. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve tonight. Specifically, some of the meetings that we identified areas that were mentioned by George by way of upgrades to the current security measures. And it's important to note that security vestibules are a best practice. They're very common nationwide, and they're important in helping the building control access, which is critical. Additionally, George mentioned cameras. Cameras are, an incredible benefit for security, and they're used widely. It's a best practice nationwide. Some of the other measures that George had mentioned, protective window film, locks, and the like, these are all areas where you have to maintain, technology, and those improvements. I would sit here tonight and tell you are congruent with best practices statewide, countrywide. We fully support those enhancements. And communication, cell service, being able to communicate, in situations where you have to, and just day to day is a best practice. So I would tell you that these communications that we've had with the district, they're going to continue, long after this Zoom call ends. We'll be looking to meet periodically to discuss best practices and can you continue to have that open dialogue with the Princeton regional schools. Also worth mentioning is that we evaluate our own ability to respond to the schools in case of an emergency. And it wouldn't be prudent if we just looked at the schools and what they had. We're constantly evaluating ourselves, making sure that we have the best plans, the best protocols, and the best equipment to respond. So everybody should be aware that we do that routinely, and we make improvements much like the schools are trying to do tonight. We do ourselves with our equipment and our ability to serve the school district.
Keith, thank you so much for that. There was a question in the chat. It's probably best answered by George and or Dave. A question about the locks. How we know if the doors are open or locked?
That's a great question. So the design of the lock set, so we have a thumb turn that will allow, or a push button. There are different designs, but there are indicators on those. So you can tell right away by looking at that door if it's locked or not. There's a red indicator on the inside that tells you if that door is locked. I assume we're talking about the classroom corridor doors.
Yes.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cecilia, Principal Burge, I should say, are there any specific, are there any things that are important to you when talking about high school security issues that are specific to Princeton?
Everything is important to me when it comes to the high school.
Good answer.
So, but yes, safety and security has been a top priority. I started it in the second half of last year. I am really, really glad to see that we're putting things in motion and seeing the light at not necessarily the end of the tunnel, perhaps the middle of the tunnel. The vestibules in particular, as you know, and a lot of the parents and staff know that our building is very unique, perhaps, certainly in the state, if not in the nation, in the sense that we have an open campus. And that speaks volume to our John Dewey way of doing schools. But coming with that, pushing that forward to today's day and age, it does come with certain kind of risks. And that's all part of this security measure that we want to make sure, first of all, everybody who comes into the building is somebody we know. We want to make sure that our kids in the building are safe and protected. And then during break time, they can certainly go out there and enjoy the green, enjoying their downtime and study outside. And again, when they return to the building, it's important for us to recognize each child, each student, and each adult in the building. So it is very, very, very important. I am slightly resentful that my office cell phone service is not great either, but high school cell phone is not part of that. But I'm delighted. I guess we'll talk about the technology improvement later that will help us from the security perspective as well. So thanks, Matt.
Principal Bird, you brought up an interesting point. I know you were at the meeting last night, as I was, and we heard our student board reps. We have 2 student board reps every year, and they rotate, and they were talking very candidly and openly about explaining why the lanyards. And I think you did a nice job now, basically, of that. I think the kids want to be, before they're buying in, they're slowly buying in, I know, but it's taken a little time to change the culture, why they have to wear the lanyards. So I know you guys are making really good inroads there with the students.
Thank you. It's not the easiest thing to get 17, 16-year-olds to do adult. Just not cool, but we're getting there. Thank you.
No, I know. Teenagers are programmed to rebel. Even the most, the ones that you think are following the rules, in some way or not, the teenage brain is always programmed to rebel in even sometimes little ways. But I wanted to thank Chief. Thank you specifically for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come with us tonight. It really meant a lot. Security is the biggest single part of this referendum. I don't think we have any more questions for you. But thank you so much for coming tonight, Chief.
Matt, there was one more question in the chat.
Yeah, I see we have a question about outside doors. Yes, they are part of the project, if that's what the question is.
Yes, not all the doors in the district.
No, the ones that need help. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, I'm seeing the.
Yeah, that's not the question, Matt. That's about how do you know if the external doors?
Well, again, the external doors will usually be locked all day long. That's the purpose of having secured entry at only 2 locations of the school.
The question is there any centralized means of knowing if they are unlocked? Is there any plans to put that in, Dave?
We have been looking at systems, to monitor the doors and indicate if they've been left open. Yep.
All right, no other questions right now about that. So let's jump forward. Move to another topic that's also high on our list: wellness and sustainability. You might wonder how our high school cafeteria and kitchen fit into this category, but I will throw this over to Dave, our facilities director, to explain.
Yeah, I mean, the best I can see is that, right now we're sending quite a bit of material to landfill. We're hoping to look at the options with the dishwasher, we haven't had a dishwasher there in years. So we're going through quite a bit of paper and plastic. So we're also looking at the possibility of a pulper or a dehydrator also to kind of cut back on our landfill. So we'll look at that as well. Higher efficiency lighting, much more efficient cooking equipment. Those are some of the major categories of what we can be doing there. We're already composting, but those are some of the things we hope to accomplish with the cafeteria.
Excellent. George, you want to talk a little bit more about some of the improvements at the cafeteria?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think just the fact that you're improving the appearance and the aesthetics of the serving area will increase the merchandisability of the products that you sell. including those products that, contribute to wellness. The salad bar becomes a more prominent feature, or, the beverages, and keeping, and the kids again, to have the opportunity to choose something maybe a little more healthier rather than rushing along, kind of just grabbing something to eat right now. So I like to look at the cafeteria, food service line improvements as the opportunity for kids to make better choices, have just that little more, visibility of all of the product, and kind of get used to where everything is. So I think that's one. I think the reduction in waiting, creates better eating habits, I think, as well, because you're not waiting quite so long to eat, and you have a little more time to digest your food and maybe enjoy the meal. So I think, and then of course the opportunity to improve the waste flow, which Dave, did mention, and increase opportunities for composting. And I think that's a definite, because many schools are doing that now, and obviously that requires a management strategy, but you have that in place already. So it may make sense to make the jump to something more compostables there. All right.
We were
that's all
we were in
those-
the cafeteria on Friday with
Yeah.
Principal Burge and the 3 other school administrators, and it was a light day from what I was told, and
Mhm.
the backup was pronounced.
Yeah, yeah, right. So
Well,
being able to, right.
Burge,
being-
Can I
you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, I just want to, when you were there, like you said, last Friday generally is a light day.
Yep.
Perhaps the most, what I'm most concerned about actually is the beginning of each school year. Just to give you some numbers for everybody to chew on, during the pandemic years when lunch was free and that was funded by federal dollars, we sold or gave out more than 800 sandwiches every single day in that year. And now we probably make about 250 sandwiches, thereabouts, each day. Some days are a little bit more, some days a little bit less. And I would say at least half of that margin is because kids can't get into the cafeteria. By this time of the year, they tend to work out a flow somewhere between, I hate to admit it, but Hokie Haven and some kind of food services, mom and dad dropping food, then bringing food, and then some purchases from the cafeteria. We end up feeding all the kids. But really, that's not ideal. The first 2 weeks of school, that section right entering into where that round wall right under that part, it's just, you just see heads and shoulders. There's nothing else. There's no room for anybody to move around to anywhere. And then everything gets circled around, getting stuck at one cashier. So with this current design, I guess it's still being finalized and developed. We're already seeing 4 cashiers. We're seeing traffic coming from both ends, going into an open area with 3 or 4 stations where kids can simultaneously grabbing from 3 spots and then rushing through the 4 cashiers. That efficiency and right there. So the optimization of that is going to improve not the traffic flow, but the students' flow a lot faster, a lot better. So this is much needed improvements in the cafeteria. Now, I am worried about the kids eating cold food and whatnot sitting on our floors, but one of our top priorities is our students who are on free and reduced lunch programs. A lot of these kids, the 2 meals they get from our school are the only 2 meals they have every single day. So this improvement is really critical for us.
Thank you so much for that insight. This is really going to be a big improvement if it passes on November 7th.
Yeah.
Our wellness upgrades would also include adding more accessible playground equipment, especially at Littlebrook and Riverside. We're looking at some new lighting and starting blocks at the middle school pool. And the Eco Lab, which is not only a detention basin, the PAC has flooded at least twice since it was built. So it's a detention basin that holds the water, and then basically it flows underneath Walnut, out underneath Choir College, out to a creek. We should forget the name of that creek back there. Anyway, but on top of being a detention basin, which we have improved in the 2018 referendum, they built a second detention basin behind the packed parking lot, which some of the water is deferred out there and then brought into the Eco Lab. But the Eco Lab, aside from being a detention basin, is also a environmental science lab that our environmental science teacher at the high school, Jim Smirk, takes a lot of pride and a lot of ownership, and really is a big part of his curriculum. I think you guys can see some pictures of that, but there are some issues with the wall. Dave, do you want to talk a little about some of the repairs we're going to do to the wall of the Eco Lab?
Yeah, the perimeter wall that supports or holds the soil back around the perimeter along the building side, which is on the left of that photo where you can see the truck. Unfortunately, it undermounts underneath the sidewalk. So we're going to have to remove the sidewalk in order to replace sections of the wall that have sort of deteriorated. A lot of it is from the salt running off the parking lot over years' time. So that's really what the focus is on it.
Great. And we do have a question about the sustainability. The question is, what projects in this referendum would save energy? Basically, the continued HVAC building management system upgrades. We're going to hopefully, after this referendum, have all of the HVAC units, whether it be heating or air conditioning, tied into centralized controls. Controls have a pretty good payback period. They pay for themselves somewhere between 7 to 10 years typically. So that would be the energy savings. Really finishing up the last referendum in 2022 would hopefully get us towards solar. So always keep that in mind. That's the goal here. It's been a while in the making, but we do want to add solar in the district, but that is not related to this referendum. Sustainability, the cafeteria. We're currently analyzing with our food service design consultants that have been brought on board, really knowledgeable group. That is, we're looking at comparing which is not going to be, simple. We're going to look at it in detail. The sustainability factors compared to having a dishwasher, which was our initial plan, or potentially compostable silverware. That's not silver, but it's diningware.
Yeah, and
So we're going to
pulp or dehydrator. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
the
going to
plates,
analyze.
even the
Go ahead,
plates. Yep. Mhm.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, the plates, silverware, pretty much everything that would normally go into the waste stream would be compostable. And then you would compost it and it would become, compost, mulch at some point in time, and it would be sold to, area farmers, and there's a market for that. So that would be the plan. The economics that have to be compared to, the cost of running a dishwasher, which they're much more energy efficient today than they ever have been. Also the new equipment, compressors are more efficient today. Lighting will be LED lighting and not the lighting you have now. So everything that is done, there's a degree of recyclable content in all the materials we use now, including the flooring materials that you're going to see, and some of the other materials that are being used. So everything kind of has a tilt towards sustainability in all the projects that we do. Even the doors have a certain amount of recycled content inside of them, and noise reductions, different things like that, all contribute to kind of the concept of sustainability long term.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, George. We did get another question about the track, the athletic field improvements. The question was, when were they last? The turf and track was last resurfaced in 2014. We wouldn't be doing this work until the summer of 2025, 11 years. You can't get much more than 10 to 12 at the max out of a turf athletic field. We do required to do, and we do periodic GMAX tests, which are basically dropping these heavy balls, and it determines I'm probably not going to use the exact engineering words, but basically the amount of cushion that's left in the surface. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. So it's definitely time. And the football team is 4-4. So, and the other sports teams, many other sports teams besides football use it. Soccer, lacrosse, pretty much everyone likes to get to play on the big field at the high school.
And Matt, from operations committee meetings, I recall that there have been some repairs that have been needed to have been made on the field and perhaps on the track, which I think confirms the fact that they're close to end of life.
Yeah, we did almost $4,000 worth of repairs in the last 12 months. And the students use it all the time for gym class. The community is a big user of the field lacrosse, the Princeton Lacrosse Club, and PFC, of course, Princeton Football Club, which is maybe probably the biggest user of that field. I spent many a cold March out there when my daughter was practicing. So it's widely used, and we are fairly compared to a lot of districts, I think, fairly lenient with allowing the community members to walk the track. So we see a lot of people in the community walking the track after school hours. I also want to talk a little bit about technology. Technology is a big part of this school, above this potential of this referendum. Upgrading to a 10 gig network infrastructure is super important. We know that after going one-to-one, right as COVID was upon us, we've had significant lags in the ability. There are certain times our teachers say about 5 to 8 minutes at the end of a class until the start of the class, when sometimes everyone can't get on the network. We all know people want to have their cell phones connected to the network in this day and age, so it really taxes. So this is going to be a really, really big improvement. So we're excited about that. I mentioned the one-to-one devices were added. And two of our schools have really poor self-service. Johnson Park, actually, that whole section of town is notoriously has poor self-service, in the middle school. So we're going to add self-service boosters along with the upgraded, like I mentioned, the 10 gig network will give teachers that satisfaction. If they can't connect with their phones to the network, then they can at least connect through the self-service boosters.
Matt, could we maybe just take a moment for Cecilia to tell us a bit about how the teachers are using technology and why bandwidth is important to them, and also how a lot of our testing is now online, so we can have days where hundreds or thousands of students are trying to connect.
Great.
Thanks. I was going to raise my hand, although you said testing and technology in the same sentence, so I'm having some flashbacks. So just a little bit of reality check at the high school. Assuming that now the bell rings, this Zoom will freeze for everybody on the screen. That's how tight we are in terms of bandwidth and how many devices. And the reason is because as soon as the bell rings, all the kids take out their cell phones, they're on social media, they're on streaming something, and that's sucking up all the capacity. It's extraordinarily frustrating for our teachers. You know, I do have to say, to some extent, I'm very fluent with technology, but in my heart, I'm very old school. I still like the old school, you know, paper and the smell of the print and the newspaper and all of that. So there were times when I was like, you know, why can't we just roll it back to pre-pandemic and throw these devices out of the window? The reality is that the whole world has moved forward for many, many good reasons. But it's creating all of these challenges. So there's really no rolling back at this point. There's only going forward. All of our teachers are using all kinds of applications on their devices to engage students with learning. Gamification is actually a word in education. It's a way to teach, to engage with students now. And each of these applications are connected with all kinds of databases. And each of these databases, such as PowerSchool, lots of teachers use Delta Math, IXL. You know, I think the curriculum office counted that there are 27 kinds of platforms that the entire district engages with throughout the year. And all of that is connected with that evil word called testing. We just had a PSAT testing, which is very, very important. It helps the district with our school report card. It puts us on the map, nationally speaking, with our test scores, as well as the number of tests we administer. But this was the first year that College Board went digital. And for the 30 minutes, I thought that we had to abort the mission. And then the problem is that with PSAT, if you abort, there's no makeup, unlike AP tests and other tests. So we ended up, this year alone, we ended up purchasing additional access point that built up a very, very limited amount of bandwidth. And it was so tight, I can tell you that we were counting the number of students from past years, recalling what the past year experiences were, and then analyzing all kinds of technical difficulties we experienced then, projecting if we were going to have similar issues or not. So our staff, our technology department, our counseling department, our testing coordinators spent hours just planning these minute details, and you can imagine the amount of time wasted on instructional concerns just by getting so many teachers and staff members involved. So at the very least, I'm just happy that with this improvement, I hope that when the bell rings, we can continue with this Zoom or some kind of things that teachers are wrapping up at the end of each class.
Thank you so much for that, Cecilia. I just want to remind everyone that they can chat, put their questions into the chat, and we'll get them answered. We already talked about the fields and the track, so I'm gonna ask Susan to talk a little bit about playgrounds. I'm laughing because we've been back and forth. She's been my playground partner of sorts for the last 18 months as we I've been trying to assess the needs of the district, and it's become a very hot topic at the elementary schools, especially. But the middle school does also have a swing set that is going to get replaced. But Susan, do you want to talk a little bit about the playgrounds?
Yeah, that's been something that both you, the district, and the board has been focused on. In fact, Operations Committee, we did a walkthrough of the 5 different playgrounds, and we consider the middle school important. Those kids really need that break time at lunch too. I think 2 of the major problems are drainage, which we saw at Community Park and Littlebrook. So we're really excited if this referendum passes to be able to address those problems, because we know that the kids can only play on the blacktop if there is not green space for them to play on. We've been also focused on ADA compatible equipment to make sure that playgrounds have basic needs so that they're have similar access for all students, and addressing things that the district, the same way we've been addressing the maintenance of the building, the maintenance of the playground has been something that's really important to the board and to, as we have seen, the elementary school families. We learned during the pandemic that outside playtime is really important, and I don't think we all realized how important it was. So I'm really glad that this is part of the focus of the referendum.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work. We've had a lot of good volunteers from both the community at large, PTOs donating equipment, but also PTOs getting involved and helping us to, rein in all that enthusiasm. We're really going to make some progress. I don't do this a lot, but give myself my team a little pat on the back, because we did go out and obtain a $75,000 grant. We think that these grants from the New Jersey DCA, Department of Community Affairs, are recurring. So we're hopefully going to be able to go out after them year after year until that funding dries up. I want to
I think that's really important. Our community has really stressed how important this is to families in each of the 4 schools and in the middle school.
Absolutely. Dave, can you tell us about some of the other smaller kind of ad hoc projects that are part of this, maintenance projects that are part of this referendum?
Yeah, I know. I was asked to keep this short, so those of you who know me, we're in trouble already. But at the high school, we have some drainage that we're also looking at that will help our tennis courts. We get a lot of mud on the courts every time it rains. We're on the door projects just to follow up with George. I mean, we're doing well over 200 door hardware change outs and doors. We're also the high school elevator number 1. It's going to get a facelift and some improvements. We're looking at, for our media center, we have insulation and ductwork that's exposed to the weather up on the roof, which we're getting some deterioration. And, we talk about energy savings there, the insulation, we're starting to lose the R value on it. We also, in the middle school, we mentioned the doors, the pool, we're getting high efficiency lighting in the pool, which will be saving some energy, saving a lot of energy. We did figure that out. I don't have the numbers with me, but $4,000 to $5,000 a year is the money, but it's more importantly, the energy. We're also looking at, when we talk about BMS control systems, just about for all the schools, we have legacy systems that are from 1999, 2002, that are barely operating in many situations. We have outdoor reset that we can't take advantage of, meaning the warmer it is outside, the less heat we should be delivering to our buildings. Instead, we can't control that. We're not managing these things the way we want to. So that's a big part of the BMS, being able to look out for our peak demand, staging things as we bring them on, better scheduling, tighter temperature control. All that stuff is important energy savings. We're also, we talked about CP, the drainage. We're really running out of patience with getting the mud off the floor. So every kid brings in a lot of mud every change of recess. So it's not so fun, but everything else I think we've talked about. Mostly the BMS is the biggest thing for us anyway, because we just need to be able to see what's going on out there and control it. We've been really able to make great strides in that, but we want to keep going with it.
Well, I think you talked about it, but the ductwork over the library, the Commons library at the high school will be is very highly anticipated by at least one employee there.
Well, it's leaking. We're getting water inside the insulation, and then it's coming down the outside of the ductwork, not inside the ductwork. So we're fighting a losing battle there. So we're gonna take care of that.
I don't see any other questions right now. So let's talk a little bit about funding strategy. We have with us bond counsel from McManaman, Scotland, Bauman, Andrea Kahn, and we also have Brian Morris from Phoenix Financial Advisors. We take pride here in Princeton at the Board of Education making responsible financial decisions, and we think that the November referendum is a good example of that. One of the things that we're doing in this particular referendum is the maturity would be 13 years because there's a lot of equipment in there that doesn't have a useful life that would fit into like a 20-year bond. Our last referendum was a 20-year bond. So the weighted average maturities comes out to 13 years. We would never want to be paying for equipment that is no longer in use after we're done using it. So we're also making, as we talked about in the beginning, smaller, more manageable improvements, and we can hope to keep the tax rate relatively steady. I was going to ask bond counsel to talk a little bit about the legal requirements about a ballot question and some of how that can be kind of a problem for school districts and the voters really to understand.
Yes. The bond proposal, if approved by the voters, would authorize the improvements that we've been discussing tonight. And it would also authorize the issuance of school bonds to finance those improvements. Now, the bond proposal question is in a form that's required by state law. And there was a process that was taken to get to this point. First, the district has a long-range facilities plan that is approved both by the district, but also by the Department of Education. And for when the district decides to go forward with projects such as the ones under discussion tonight, applications have to be made to the Department of Education, and they review and approve those. And they review and approve them for consistency first with the long-range facilities plan, and also for the requirements of state law, but also to determine which costs are eligible for funding. And we are required to put information in the bond question that the DOE provides in letters that they provide to the district concerning their findings on the projects. The district is fortunate that most of the costs are eligible for funding. And the way that funding is obtained is once the bonds are issued, the district will receive annual debt service aid, which means that the district issues bonds and there's a debt service requirement, and state aid will come to the district to offset the cost of those in annual installments. And over the life of the issue, it will be approximately $5 million. And this has been the amount that has been approved, the costs that have been approved for the district. The aid is only available for projects through debt service aid, and of course, if the bond authorization is approved by the voters.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea. Brian, did you want to talk, Morris, did you want to talk a little more about the financing and some of the issues surrounding that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. I just want to reiterate, you know, as Andrea said, the ability to get debt service aid through a referendum is one of the most important financial advantages. The only way to get that aid, the $5 million from the state, is via a voter approved referendum. So the $5 million that was awarded to the district represents about 30% of the total debt service payments on the bonds. And that amount directly offsets what is required to be funded each year from local property taxes.
Awesome.
Oops, sorry.
Keep going.
I was just going to say another advantage of the financing is that municipal borrowers like the school district have access to very low interest rate financing and the ability to fund large scale projects, you know, spread over a long period of time without a one-time large budgetary impact. So by financing the project over 13 years, it allows the district to match the financing term to the useful life, as Matt mentioned, and spread the cost over multiple years of students using the facilities. So based on our estimated interest rates, the average tax impact is projected to be $104 per year for a home assessed at the Princeton average assessment of just under $850,000. Just a reminder that is the assessed value. It's what the taxes are based on. That's not the market value of the home. So that those numbers could be different, and your assessed value would be on the tax bill. And again, since Princeton's borrowing for 13 years, the bond interest rate is lower than if the district was going out for a 20-year or 25-year financing.
And Brian, when you talk about this, it's we want to be clear, obviously, and you remind me of this all the time, as does Andrea always, that it's an estimated, the tax impact is estimated based on the interest rate when we would issue the debt, and that would take somewhere, usually around 6 weeks at least, 6 to 8 weeks after a successful referendum.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, there's a number of steps that are involved in the financing, including preparing an offering prospectus, getting a bond rating. The bonds are sold via a competitive bidding process, you know, which ensures that the lowest rate is obtained based on market conditions at the time of the sale. But yeah, that's exactly right, Matt. You know, there obviously is some interest rate volatility. Until then, the market has been you know, volatile as everyone knows. Interest rates have been increasing out of COVID as the Fed has aggressively raised rates to combat inflation. So we estimated for this a 3.5% borrowing cost. But again, that's subject to change, you know, based on the interest rates at the time of the sale. But just to put it in some perspective, you know, I ran a couple sensitivity tests, and a 25 basis point increase only results in an extra $1 to the average home. So that 104 would go to 105. So due to the size of the tax base, the 30% state aid, and the 13-year maturity schedule, it's just a relatively modest increase due to changes in the interest rate.
Yeah, and
And-
we were conservative when we were doing our estimates. We were like 35 to 40 basis points, which is basically 0.4%, right? We had 40 basis points of cushion at the time, which has seemingly eroded. But like you said, we don't know what's going to happen 8 to 10 weeks out.
And in addition to that, there always is the opportunity to refund should rates come down considerably. And then with the potential for interest cost savings at a later date.
That's right.
Yeah, and I guess I should add as well, the one positive thing about higher interest rates, or slightly higher interest rates, still historically very low, is that the reinvestment rates on the bond proceeds would be significantly higher as well. So in the short term, while you're working on the projects, all the money won't be spent at once. It can be reinvested at a very high, attractive interest rate, and that money can be used to offset, budgetary expenditures.
That's right, Brian. But that's a really good point. But we cannot use those interest earnings, right, to increase the scope or cost of the referendum. We can use it to repay the debt on the referendum.
That's
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, though. But it will save the taxpayers money.
Mhm.
What happens if the project costs run higher than estimated?
Well, there's a built-in cushion. There's a contingency. And in addition to that, the architects undoubtedly will be bidding with alternates. The district can't exceed the par amount of the bonds that have been authorized by the bond proposal. You can only spend up to that. You can't spend the interest earnings. They are to go back to the district and not to be used for the capital projects. But there is the ability to basically monitor how the project comes in, both in terms of using the contingency where necessary, although you do need to maintain a certain 5% at all times. And of course, the more that you've spent down, the lower that amount becomes. And then if you bid with alternates, you can make sure that you award the alternates so that you come in close to the projected amount.
All right, we thank you so much for sharing your expertise. It's valued by us. I've seen some other questions come in. About technology upgrades to a 10 gig. What is the current bandwidth? We are at a 1 gig network. So that's and I'm not a technology guru, so to speak, although my dad would be rolling over his grave being that he was a computer programmer and always wanted me to go into technology, but I won't go into that here. I think it's exponential, the increase. It wouldn't just be 10 times, so the bandwidth would greatly be increased. Many of our peers that have one-to-one are their their network infrastructure backbone is up to a 10 gig now, but we'll be getting also the most up-to-date WAPs, as everyone. We were looking at the WAPs today outside at one of the schools. Dave and I were doing our construction meeting. Wireless access points. Those will be upgraded to the highest bandwidth available currently. There's a question about preventing students from accessing social media on school bandwidth and only allow access to education. Well, it's a constant battle. Maybe Cecilia could weigh in on this.
I'll chime in on this one. It's a question I think we in school buildings all struggle with. There are significant hurdles. I would like it if we can accomplish that. I'll just name a few that comes on top of my head. One of which is that phones these days have become so personal. It's like taking a phone away from a student. It's like taking a body part away from them. You think I'm joking. I am not. The sense of security, whether it's real or false, it's meaningful to our students. So that's something that whether it's me or all the educational leaders across the country, do not engage in banning cell phones easily. That's number one. Number two, it does yield significant benefits for some of our kids. Certain lifestyles that I was not even aware of before I became a special ed teacher, can become, now I'm more aware of it, so I'm more sensitive of it. For example, some students are diabetic, and they use an app to monitor their sugar level. It gives them warning, and then some of them are also connected with different kind of professionals who are all, or parents monitoring that. So as you can imagine, especially for younger children, I would assume I'm speaking for the middle schoolers almost, or elementary school, who have that monitor, and then a parent is at work, that connectivity is really important. And now the third example I can think of, I'm getting out of my area of expertise quite a bit. As far as I understand, I'm not a techie at all. I understand the bond language, but I don't understand the tech language. But the regulating or banning social media or applications on the phone is a lot more complex than just shutting down the network and no students can access the phone. So those are very two different actions that have very different results, and each carry unintended consequences. So a simple concept, a binary concept of on or off can generate a lot of ripple effects, and some of them may be what we desire, and others may be potentially quite damaging. So there's no easy answer to that. But having said that, I do encourage all parents, especially now, encourage all of your kids to stay away from social media in particular. Stay away from private chats. Private chats are not private. I deal with HIV almost daily, and most of which come from private chat rooms. So digital devices, it's not a safe space. We are working with PTO, who has been so fabulous and presenting all kinds of ideas and resources to us. We're looking to engage with some outside people, hopefully, to bring in different resources to our kids and our parents as well, specifically targeting digital citizenship, responsible usage of social media and their personal cell phones.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for that input. We don't have any more questions right now, so we're going to move on and talk about how to vote in this bond referendum. So we can't tell you how to vote, but we want to tell you how to vote, if you bear with me. There are more options than ever to make your voice heard on Tuesday, November 7th. One way is to vote by mail. If you want to do that, but have not received a vote by mail ballot, you can submit an application for one. Our website has the simple form that you can print and send to the Mercer County Clerk's office. There is no online application process for a vote by mail ballot. The application must be received by the county by October 31st for that office to send you a mail-in ballot. Please note that a mailed application has to be received by October 31st, not merely postmarked by that date. So it's an important differential as opposed to your tax return. If it's stamped on the April 15th, then you're good to go, but not in this case. When your application is accepted, the county will send you a mail-in ballot. That's when a postmark matters. It must have that mark by November 7th to count in this referendum, or the general election for that matter. You can also deposit your ballot in a drop box or bring it to the county clerk's office by 8 p.m. on that night. Mail-in ballots will not be accepted at in-person polling locations. There are more rules than ever when it comes to voting. I know Andrea is kind of an expert. You can skip the postal system and get a vote by mail ballot in person. That process requires a trip to the clerk's office in Trenton, and the deadline is 3 p.m. on Monday, November 6th. You can turn in your application, get a vote by mail ballot, mark it, and submit it all at once. That's how the vote by mail options work. There are two options for voting in person because the school district has added its bond proposal to the general election ballot, which saves us money, I might want to say. In this case, it will save us money. People can vote early at specific locations starting on Saturday, October 28th and running through Sunday, November 6th. The 5th. Please note that there is no early voting on Monday, November 6th, the day before the regular polls open. From October 28th through November 5th, a registered voter can go to any of the special locations and vote in person with a regular voting machine. Times, locations, and other details are on our website. The third way to vote is the traditional method of going to your assigned polling place in person. Polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 7th. If you aren't sure which poll to go to, check our website. Additionally, all registered voters should receive a sample ballot in the mail at least a week before the election. The sample ballot will list the voters' assigned polling place. That's a lot of information about voting forms. So, but please go to our website if you have any questions. I would like to ask our board members a question that we have heard out in the community. Why is this referendum being held as part of the general election? I don't know if Susan or Mara wants to jump in.
I'll jump in.
Brian, great, thank you.
For two reasons. One is when we hold it on one of the other, I think it's 5 approved dates during the year, 4 or 5 approved dates. We currently, the state requires us to have drop boxes throughout the county, and the cost of running an election outside of the general election is in the neighborhood of $80,000 or $90,000. So this saves taxpayers money, makes it more accessible, and still allows us to get our bid documents out in January and February so that we can commence the work in the summer of 2024.
Thank you so much for that. And that is an important change. There was a big difference between 2018 and 2022. It was a non-general election referendum, and it was about 4 times the cost in 2022, mostly because of that requirement that they have I think it was 31 ballot boxes all over the county. But we know, for the most part, they weren't used, but they still had to collect them every day. So it's something we're going to try to lobby the county to try to rectify. So it was a lot of great information tonight. I really want to thank once again all our panelists. Thanks to Principal Burge, who's been super busy, of course, starting off the year. She's going to be holding some building tours. I think the first one is tomorrow night. Was that at 7 tomorrow? What time was that?
6:30.
6:30.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and Susan on the call is going to be one of the leaders of the tour as well. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. All the community members are welcome to take a building tour of Princeton High School. That's the building in this particular referendum that will get the most improvements. And there's 2 other dates next week. I don't have them right in front of me.
Matt, there are 4 dates in total. Tomorrow at 6:30, Saturday at noon, Thursday the 26th at 7 p.m., and Saturday the 28th at 10 a.m.
Thank you so much, Brian. I didn't have those at my fingertips. I really appreciate that. We're really glad that the people that came out tonight to listen to us and learn more about the referendum. This recording will be available on our website. And we really appreciate all of you out there. Thank you. And please remember to vote and talk to your neighbors and friends. Thank you and have a great night.